Hello, everybody. Cricket Badger Podcast. It's time again to have a chat about all things cricket. And as we approach episode number 500, I'm still scratching my head to think of ways to do episode number 500 to give it the right and true prominence it deserves as we get about 14 podcasts away from that. But today, obviously, we're going to continue talking a little bit about racism in cricket, but also looking at the future of Yorkshire County Cricket Club. I've always thought all the way through this is an opportunity for Yorkshire County Cricket Club to A, be better, B, be more inclusive, and C, get things right going forward. Draw that line in the sand and see where they come to. So they're actually a really strong and powerful and club that everybody can be proud of as we move forward. I welcome onto the podcast today. We have Chris Marshall and Jim Himsworth with me. Gentlemen, hello.
Hi, James. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good indeed. It's good to have you both with me today. I've entitled this "Yorkshire Members Are Revolting," and I'm pleased to say that you two, you haven't got revolting faces at all. It's a pleasure to have you on. But Chris, just looking at where Yorkshire are at the moment, obviously reputationally about as low as they've ever been. But as I said on the intro there, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the club to learn lessons, get better, and as we'll come on to, involve the members in everything they do.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think Yorkshire, firstly, they're rock bottom. Secondly, they're between a rock and a hard place, in terms of the membership. We've got on one hand an institutionally racist organisation, on the other hand, a morally bankrupt and one in terms of the ECB. So there's only one way to go, and that's up. And ironically, I think that is the way you will solve racism, from the bottom up. I don't really believe that another program or set of t-shirts or statement or symbol or whatever from however well-meaning, until you get people around the table and ask them, why are they? Why do you think you're not? What do you think? The way out of it is. It has to be a more inclusive solution. And that's the opportunity. That is a great opportunity that has come about through an horrendous situation.
Jim, you on the same path with that? Do you see the same opportunities for the club moving forward?
Absolutely. And I'll probably go a little bit further, because I'm actually more and more livid with Yorkshire, because they failed to see 16 months ago when this came out, they could have actually blazed the trail, for want of a better phrase. They really could have done good and constructive work and really got to it and dealt with it, and then really moved forward. And it just seems that the members, the fans, everybody has just been saying, can we sort this? Can we sort this? And the club's hierarchy has just been like, nah, there's out to sort. There's out to sort. And there clearly is. You don't get summoned to select committees if there's nothing there. And Yorkshire have really missed the boat on this. And they've ended up, and you've mentioned there about the reputation of the club. It's dire. It's absolutely shocking. I have people coming up to me at work. They know I'm a member. They know I'm a massive fan, and they're just playfully ribbing me. It's like, oh, you must be racist. It's like, I ain't racist. But this is the fault of the club, and that's absolutely infuriating, because they've really missed the opportunity for cricket in this country. And Yorkshire is such an institution. Cricket in Yorkshire, York Cricket Club, everything about it. They've really missed the opportunity to grab it by the cojones, if you will, and say, right, no, we're changing, and you're all going to change with us, because this is what we can do. And it's frustrating.
Go on, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that, but maybe a little bit advocate is that I'm far from convinced that 16 months ago this management team that we had then would have been capable of doing that. I think that's the bit that I kind of hang on to in that, is that yes, they have missed an opportunity, but if they had attempted to, I'm not sure they would have actually done that good of a job, because they would have just stuck a plaster over it. They would have, because they were so disjointed, from in terms of what the members want, in terms of what society wanted, in terms of what was going on within their organisation, that you and I know, James, that when we set up the thing to try and force an ECB, when it's about racism and racism alone, there was a lot of interest, and there's a lot of, yes, you're doing the right thing, but there's not quite so many people prepared to actually put their hand up, because everyone's a little bit afraid of what their own past may reveal, or how that will go down in their street or the dinner party or whatever. But as soon as it became incredibly apparent that the organisation was just being run ineptly, loads of people put their hand up, because that was safer. Let's be honest, that was safer to go and say, these guys are ruining my club. And so, one of the good things that has come out of this is, so far, Lord Patel. The best thing that's come out of it is the fact that there can be little doubt about the fact that change has to happen. But we have to figure out as members how we can A, be involved in that, and B, make a difference.
Jim, on that, Lord Patel's come in, and he's only been in there a matter of days still, hasn't he? I know he's been very busy, obviously, in the early part of his tenure. But everything he said at the moment seems to be what I would hope he would say. He seems to be taking it seriously. He seems to be talking to the right people. He's apologised to Azeem. The early signs are positive from Lord Patel for me.
Absolutely. I've said this to Chris in private conversations. All the right things are being said. The proof, as always, will be in the pudding. You quite correctly say he's been in the job, two and a dribble weeks. So, yeah. And I'm pretty sure he'll have a full inbox. I'm pretty sure he's a busy boy.
It's difficult to change the world in 2 weeks, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the right moves are being made. I haven't interacted with Lord Patel much. I don't know a great amount about him. Obviously, I know bits and bats what you read in the press, but he seems to be a good man who genuinely wants to make the right changes, and I think he's probably the man to lead the club forward. I know he's only interim chairman. I guess we'll all vote on making him the permanent chair at the AGM when we all renew, if we all renew in the new year. And I'd like to see that happen, because he does seem like a bloke who at least knows what needs to happen. And like Chris said a couple of minutes ago, it's not about wearing a t-shirt. It's not about banners on the side of Headingley. It's about actual real action. And I would really hope that he is the man who can do that, can try and force bits change, particularly in the hierarchy of the club. I appreciate that.
Chris, on what Jim's just said there, you mentioned it earlier about it coming from the bottom up. I agree with that to some extent, but I also think the club sets the tone to a degree. So the club's got to be showing people what the right thing to do is, and then almost from the bottom up, people need to be thinking, well, they're doing that. We need to be, because the danger is that if it's taken seriously at the grassroots and at member level, but the club's still saying the wrong thing, the message gets lost, doesn't it? The club has to set the tone.
Well, exactly. You need a leader, and on that alone, however unscripted it was, one of the key visions and memories I have of the select committee was when they brought Lord Patel down to sit alongside Hutton, and it was like chalk and cheese in terms of a leader. In terms of and in golf parlance, you don't win your 4-day golf match on day one, but you can lose it. So in his first 2 weeks, he could have lost the membership. He could have lost credibility. But he hasn't. And one of the things he hasn't done is he hasn't overpromised. He hasn't come in and said, glibly, I'll sort this out. And he hasn't responded to every single thing that's been in the news, because he's saying, look, I've got to figure out. I guess he sat there going, I've got to figure out who I can trust. I've got to figure out who I can trust within the organisation, who I can trust within the ECB, who I can trust within the membership when I speak to them. and everything else. But the view I have is that we are being led by somebody who understands cricket. I know that he played cricket last year, in a charity game and ruptured his elbow, and stuff. Yeah, so if he's still playing at that level, that came back to the game last year, he gets a big thumbs up for me, and a lot of sympathy. To put that into context, at Scarborough this year, I was there for a game, and it was a chairman's lunch. We were in the marquee. The Hutton and the board were there. They had absolutely no interaction with anybody. They just looked and felt like a superior table, right? Looking down, not wanting to get their shoes soiled, right? With absolutely no interest whatsoever. No level of professional leadership, not even going around and just walking the room, making eye contact with anybody. They seemed to sit there, talk, and when it was rained off, they couldn't disappear quick enough. They could have done a Q&A. They could have done so much stuff, right? They had understood what members following Yorkshire felt and wanted, but they just looked like a group of a dozen people that are so far apart from the guys that are paying the 250 quid membership or the 60 quid for a test match and the £5 a pint. And it's 150 quid to go to a major game probably a day now at Headingley. Right? And you want people that understand what 150 quid means to somebody. And you're right, you need the leadership at the top, but the change will come by 100,000 people changing something 1%. Yeah, not by one person trying to think they can solve the world.
Presumably you two guys are talking to friends and fellow members about what's going on at the moment. I know you're both looking to try and force an extraordinary general meeting, regardless of what Lord Patel does in the meantime, because you think that the club needs to basically listen to members and listen to the thoughts from the kind of the floor of the hall, rather than just continue without that kind of input.
The emails that I get, I set up the specific email address for members to get in touch if they wanted to put their name down. And the general vibe is similar to myself. It's anger and it's embarrassment, and it's now gone way beyond Azeem Rafiq being called what he was called. That in itself is terrible. But once you actually read the emails that I'm getting, and the members are just so angry at the way that the club has handled this, and it's been bullish, and they've tried to marginalise the members. And what Chris has said there. I wasn't at that game in Scarborough with the chairman's lunch, but I have been up in the Hawk Suite before, the presidential suite at Headingley, and it's exactly the same thing. The board and the bigwig, they look at you like, well, why are you here? Who are you? It's like, well, I've been invited here. I'm a member. And they look at you like you don't matter. And these are the people who run our cricket club. We're all Yorkshire fans. We're all Yorkshire members. We all love the place. And the disconnect is so real. It's mind-boggling.
Chris, there's a members committee at the moment. I spoke to one of the people that sits on the members committee recently, and I think during this period of 16 months when the club's been under fire to have the investigation and to publish things and to involve people, they've been very much sidelined. And I know from talking to you as well, there's a member on the board, isn't there, that basically was appointed but hasn't really spoken to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably 5. Yeah, sorry. There are 2 aspects. I think the members committee has about 5 members on it, and 1 board member attends it. It's called a forum. It's set up as an opportunity for people to talk. It has no sort of interaction. It doesn't deal with the members. We never hear from them. I don't know if I'm just missing on the emails. Jim will tell you. But yeah, there's nothing that comes to us. There's nothing saying, want to do this or what do you think about that. From my business perspective, what Yorkshire have done is they've done the minimum to actually tick a box that says we have some involvement with our members, and they've done it in such a way to keep it at arm's length and not have to do with it. At the last AGM, we were asked to vote on a board member from the membership. That process was done via the internal nominations panel only, so the members were invited to apply. They assessed the CVs and they came up with a shortlist and appointed somebody. And the person they appointed was a chief operating officer from Morrison's, right? Which, and I don't know him. I've never heard from him. I never heard from him when he was canvassing to be a member. I never heard from him when he was appointed. I never heard from him through all of this information. So I don't know anything about him. But it's hard not to think that this is just that same old rite of progression that you get as a senior manager of a large organisation in Yorkshire, that at some point on your CV you get appointed to the Yorkshire board for the old school network and the old boy network, and that's just how it feels. And what they've got to do is start understanding the perception they've set and deal with the perception. We may be wrong, but if we're allowed to guess that based on what we see and hear and happens to us, then we've got a valid point. And I think that whole thing needs restructuring.
I always think, Jim, and Chris, you can come back on Jim's answer as well, but I always think, Jim, that the members committee is a great opportunity, because you want to have that funnel, because you can't obviously talk to every single member, because hopefully you're going to have tens of thousands of them in the future, and you can't talk to them individually, but you need to have that funnel so that kind of the feedback comes into that members committee, and then maybe one or two of those go onto the board to actually represent the members in the discussions that actually really matter, that change the course of the club.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with. Certainly don't disagree with the sentiment. But like Chris just said there, look who was appointed as the members' representative on the board. It's likely somebody who's very well known to the club in existence. In their existence, in their existing position, they'll almost toe the line, so to speak. And Chris just mentioned there about the old boys network. These things, it goes further. Members forums, I've never been contacted. I've been a member of Yorkshire for 8 years. I've never been contacted by a members forum. I don't know when they meet. I don't know what they discuss. You each follow me on Twitter. I'm not shy of having opinions, and I'm more than happy to input in these things. I'm not saying that what I say is gospel at all, but I'm more than happy to try and get more involved with these things. But I never hear anything, and I'm normally in the long room, and I never hear anything. Chris mentioned there again, sorry, I have to go back to this about the Old Boys Network. We only have to look at the inquiry. It was done by friends of Roger Hutton's or his former law firm. It's just one big old boys network, and it's not worked, and it's failed in this instance so badly that the future of the club's in serious jeopardy. We can all sit here and wax lyrical that we're members and we should have some form of authority. Well, that's all been taken away from us down the years, and now all we're getting is the old boys network saying, "Oh, well, no, you're all wrong." That I believe is what needs to change. We have to have more member representation, even if not at board level, but we have to have representation. We have to have a conduit, if you will. I think you use the term funnel to get to the Hawk suite and get what members are feeling across. Because I can't imagine that there's many members right now who are very happy and proud to be members of Yorkshire.
Chris, your thoughts on that? You're breaking up a little bit, Chris, there.
Yeah, so I lost.
Well, Chris has started to talk like Norman Collier.
No. Is it gone? Let me just,
That's better. That's better.
right. Okay. I think an area that I disagree with Jim on there is I think that the members do need to be on the board. I think that the members committee needs to be larger. I think it needs to have a greater cross representation of the communities that Yorkshire are involved with and want to be involved with. I think that it needs a couple, if not 3 people on the board, because I think that the danger that Lord Patel has at the moment is that if he only appoints somebody from an Asian background, he will be accused of bowing to the inevitable. If another white middle-aged person like us, he will be bowing to the inevitable. So I think he needs to try and have a cross-representation on the board of those communities. But I think the most important thing is that it has to be two-way. He has to say to that membership committee, get involved, give them something to own that they have responsibility for within this change in the organisation. And therefore, part of that responsibility is for the management committee to come back and say, this is our voice. I mean, Jim said earlier that he's getting a lot of emails with anger. But the next thing is say, well, what can we do about that? How can we help the change? Because it's very easy to be angry. It's very easy to tell somebody they must be better. It's very easy to say, I wouldn't do it that way. But I think that the first thing that needs to happen is that the members need to be got together with a facilitator to try and come up with some recommendations and some things that are very tangible, rather than we want it to be better. And that they are just at the board, and some working parties are put together to take things forward. At the moment, I would, having looked at this myself from a business, some of the business things I've done, I'm less worried about structure and roles, people now in terms of that. I'd be more involved in getting some groups together to make a difference and start some momentum. The other stuff will take care of itself, but at the moment, the opportunity is to listen to the members and try and get something tangible that we can do.
I think with Yorkshire, there's obviously been a problem. I saw today the club released the stats that there's 36 people have come forward to the whistleblower hotline. Don't know any of those people, who any of them are and what their complaints are. Some of them may be nothing, some of them may be quite serious, we don't know. But there's obviously people there that want to have a talk on that hotline to say their piece. I think that Yorkshire, though, have been unlucky in the respect that they've come up against Azeem, who was not prepared to go away. But I think they've actually, going back to the right from the start with this, I think they've been lucky in a way that they've been given this chance to be better. But Jim, the one thing that's very important is that from Yorkshire's perspective, it's got to admit there is a problem, and Lord Patel's done that. But we're seeing from around the rest of the country, the other 17 counties have issues too, don't they? This isn't just a Yorkshire thing.
No, absolutely not. It goes all the way to the top. And I mean, I remember reading about this at the time, and I'm not hugely educated, but I remember the Michael Carberry allegations that he came out with. Was it 2016, 2017? When he was playing for Hampshire, which related to his time in England, basically getting scapegoated for us getting slaughtered in Australia. And Essex have had their problems, and there's more and more and more that's going to come out, and it's going to engulf all 18 first-class counties. And I said in our little preview when it was just the 3 of us, that's the frustrating thing is. And I remember watching the DCMS committee, and something that Azeem Rafiq said, I'll paraphrase, I don't remember the exact quote, but he basically said, you can have all the commissions and the committees in the world, they're not working, they're not doing anything. And then an hour later, Tom Harrison came out and reeled them all off as achievements. And I just remember thinking to myself, you didn't listen to a single word Azeem Rafiq said, did you? You didn't, because everything he's just said is that hasn't worked. You have then come out and said, well, I've done this. And it was really quite frustrating. And it goes, I mean, we know that racism exists in our society. We know that. We saw it in football this summer when the three lads missed their penalties, the abuse that they got because they were black. We know it exists in cricket. I'm sure we all have seen or heard it in one capacity or another. But now we're at the stage where it's got to stop now. I can't fix society. I can't even fix the ECB, and I'm not confident particularly I can fix Yorkshire. But we can really try. And there's a lot of right-minded members out there who want to do the same. Let's get this out of our club.
That again, Chris, is something that Azeem said when he was giving his evidence, wasn't it? That, you know, from his point of view, he can't change society, like Jim just said. But, you know, we can look after what we know, can't we? And we've got a chance to change cricket. You know, cricket is for us as people. Cricket is something we can actually have a little bit of an impact on. And this is our chance to maybe, you know, just on a local level, change something that might actually be better for their future generations.
No, absolutely. I mean, I just want to pick up on one thing that Jim alluded to there in terms of racism in cricket. I started reading a book recently by two guys called Fay and Kynaston, which was called Arlott Swanton and the Soul of English Cricket. So Arlott and Swanton, yeah, two of the legends of broadcasting, absolute legends, didn't get on, didn't like each other, right? It took to page 2 of this book, right, written in the 60s, before they said the one thing that they were united on was how much they detested racism in cricket.
I thought you say each other. Sorry.
So that's 60 years.
Yeah.
Right. That's 60 years of cricket administrators trying to solve this problem, and they have failed. That's 60 years of endemic failure. So there wasn't any surprise, was there, Jim? There's no Yorkshire member I've come across or anybody in cricket that was surprised by what Azeem. The details, yes, some of them was horrendous, but the concept of racism in cricket, nobody was surprised that that's there. Nobody was surprised that the Yorkshire was there. But the only people who haven't really been able to fix or tasked with fixing society, going back to my point earlier, is society itself. Yeah. Sometimes that thing about you put two warring factions in a room and lock the door till they come out. Yeah, either one dead or they've created a solution. Well, you're almost at that level. You're almost at that level of saying let society, fix itself. Because I think in a lot of cases, on the streets, in the terraces, it's not that bad. You go to Yorkshire, you go to the Western Terrace to sit with Jim, right? You have a laugh, a crack, a joke with everybody. At the end of the Pakistan game this season, the camaraderie and fun that was happening outside the gates at the end of the game, and we'd won. Yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You'd be sat there going like, problem what? But go back to members stand. It's comfortable. It's comfortable not because they're. It's comfortable because of the historic way they talk about, and there's this theory of it that makes it comfortable as opposed to chanting something objective or having a go. It's just that people just live there.
You're just breaking up. You're just breaking up a little bit there again, Chris. But we're getting what you're saying. But I don't. I mean, I'm on Facebook and I was looking through some of the Facebook groups the other day, and it shocked me actually. It's quite easy to paint a rosy picture of Yorkshire supporters as being all on message and all against what the club's done and all for Azeem and for change and stuff. But that's, from what I've seen, that is far from true. And I even saw a group of people the other day who were kind of middle-aged white blokes who were presumably high up in their own cricket clubs and in the local, and have an influence on younger people who were still saying, well, what's wrong with using the P word? I can understand why it was dangerous in the 80s and 90s with P bashing and stuff like that. But now, surely we're just back to being able to call people what we like. But these are people that, are still, even after watching what's happened over the last 2 and 3 weeks, are still saying that, Jim.
Well, I mean, I messaged you directly the other day. I left one of the Facebook groups. In fact, the only Yorkshire group that I was in. I left it. I saw some of the stuff that you were getting, and I won't name names. And I was stunned. I was just absolutely gobsmacked. I was just like, what is going on here? And I remember 2 weeks ago in the same group, I got into it with somebody because it was just like, I get called a pommy. Why can't I call somebody the P word? Why don't you just try calling them Pakistani? Or better still, their name. Do you know? And you just...
And not Steve.
It's a mindset so alien to me. I don't understand it. And you're quite correct. I can only speak for the members who have emailed me to put their names forward for an EGM. But I don't disagree with it. I've seen the fan groups. I've also seen some of the behaviour from certain Twitter accounts who are almost relishing in, obviously, some of the more lurid details, shall we say, of the Azeem Rafiq that have come out the last few days. They're relishing in it. They're loving it. And I'm just like, what? So you're loving the fact that it's just now a mudslinging contest and no issues are really going to get solved? What's actually wrong with you? There is an issue with Yorkshire. Azeem Rafiq isn't perfect. Nobody ever said he was, least of all me. And you seem to be loving and enjoying this. And you're quite correct in what you're saying. Some of the fan base, I'll use the word, it's toxic. And it is. And I don't know how to deal with that. I don't. These are the people who I sit in the long room alongside, who I probably have a chinwag with, you know, when Don Bess is bowling. You know, these are the people who I chat to, and I don't know how we fix that.
How do we fix that, Chris?
Well, cheers, Jim and James. I think I'm frantically looking around for a fourth person here. No, I think that it does come back down to peer group, peer pressure in a large way. Peer group, peer pressure, get people in a room, get them talking, have a code of conduct for membership, have something that says that, you know, I want to be proud of it. I mean, I was saying to James before we started, Jim, that one of the problems is that there's not a lot to being a member. You don't get much. I mean, this year, Yorkshire's whole thing about being a member was, you know, if you become a member, you get early doors tickets for the test matches in 22, and if you buy those, then you get early doors tickets for the Ashes in 23. So the only tangible thing they could come up with was that we went to the front of the queue for test matches. Well, that's not about being a member of Yorkshire. That's just being at the front of a velvet rope and going into a nightclub type of thing. So they have to sit down and figure out what being a member of Yorkshire is, and what type of, you know, what values that go with that, and what responsibilities, and, you know, take that back into the community as well and be proud of it. You know, because, you know, my biggest issue is Yorkshire, you know, is that, you know, being my age, you know, I went to the test matches in the 70s with my father and listened to him tell me about, you know, when he was there in 48 for the Invincibles, and we sat in the same place. You know, we used to carry our chairs in there. So he was there for the Invincibles for 48. We were both there for Boycott's 100th 100. Yeah, we were there during the 81 Ashes with Willis and both of them. And we were there, you know, as a whole family for the Ashes, for Stokes' Ashes, not on the day, but for that day. And those are great memories, and they're associated with Yorkshire and because of Yorkshire. And I just have a horrible feeling that those are going to be lost. Yeah, that's a big fear I have, is that, you know, that whole history and tradition will be lost. So you've got to find a way of membership being ambassadors. You've got to find a way for them actually having some pride and something tangible and something that they get out of being there, rather than you have an opportunity to buy your tickets first for another £150 a day, because that's not being a member.
I had a long conversation with somebody the other day about the thing that I love about county cricket, about the 18 county structure, and is the history, the tradition, the fact that all of these things happened in the past, and we're kind of keeping it all going, and the 4-day stuff and everything else. And to me, that's probably the greatest thing about county cricket, is that tradition and that history. It's also the worst thing about it as well, because it sets it kind of, all of the bad stuff we're seeing at the moment is because of that kind of thing, isn't it? The kind of the historical white dominance in the boardrooms and in the committee rooms, and everybody that's ever made a decision in the county club is pretty much white, and they've made it however they saw it would be. It's going to take some, Jim. I mean, I live in Bradford, and I've spoken to a lot of people, people of colour in Bradford over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and you say to them, like you were saying earlier about, you mentioned Yorkshire County Cricket Club, and their eyes roll back in their head. There is a massive disconnect between the South Asian population of Yorkshire and other ethnic groups as well, and Headingley Cricket Ground. They don't see it as being their club, and that's going to take a big step. A lot's going to have to change for that trust to be not only recovered from the last 2 weeks, but it's never been there really anyway.
No, it hasn't. And I'll just take you up on your point. I think I said this to you on the phone a couple of weeks ago. I've been a member 8 years. I can count on one hand the amount of South Asian people that I have ever seen at Headingley. And look at where Headingley is. It's in, obviously it's in Leeds, but it's close proximity to Bradford, and it's close proximity to areas like Hare Hills. Where are these people? When Pakistan are playing a test match, they are all there. When India are playing a test match, they're all there. I would say Bangladesh, but the ECB don't let Bangladesh come over and play cricket anymore. But where are these people? They don't feel part of Yorkshire. They don't feel part of our cricket club, and that actually upsets me. As long as people are turning up and supporting Yorkshire, I don't care who you are. But and you used a really good word there for it. You used the word disconnect, and that is exactly what it is. And you can throw all the money you want into Bradford Park Avenue, and you can have net sessions there, but until you're actually engaging properly with the community, and again, I don't know the answer to this, it's going to continue, and I don't know what the solution is.
I come back down to the fact that you still got to just go and ask people why they're not there. Yeah, you've got to have that you've got to open that communication at all levels at the bottom, and you have to be prepared to lose a percentage of the current membership, right? Because there is the concept of being a member is that there's an element of exclusivity, isn't there? That's you're a VIP member, a member of a club. So it's a catch-22. A membership infers an element of exclusivity. Right, but you've got to go and find out and say, but it has to be open to all, because society is open to all. So we have to go and have conversations with every basis of community, every aspect of the communities in society, and ask, why aren't you? What would we need to do? Then give me time, and how will you measure whether I've done it? It's the basics. It's the absolute basics about, you don't sit there in an ivory tower. If you and I, James, tried to understand what Jim wanted in life, right, we would just get it so wrong, right? Go and ask Jim what he wants, right? And we have somewhere to start. We have somewhere to start where we can then say, okay, understand that's what you want. Would you accept some, all, or a balance of that? And how will you measure our success? And then you've got something to go away and go to somewhere like the ECB about the suspension, about the members, and say, right, this is the shape of it. This is where we want to get to, right? And then we sort of say, who wants to help us get there? So fundamentally, it just needs running properly.
It's just like any. It's like any relationship, Chris, isn't it? If you're going to try and create some kind of friendship or loyalty or long-term trust with somebody, you look them in the eyes, you shake their hand, and you get to know them. And it's the same with this, isn't it? You get to know people, and you try and make friends so they come into the ground. Effectively, that's basically what you're trying to do. In terms of the ECB and future penalties, and I know Jimmy, you were saying that you felt that Yorkshire were maybe being signalled out a bit. Sorry, I'm going to get croaky. Do you think Yorkshire are going to be over punished by the ECB?
Well, let's see what comes out in the next few. Well, I mean, it's going to be a long winter as cricket fans, and I'm not talking about the Ashes. Yorkshire. See, I'm very cynical regards the ECB. They got involved and sanctioned Yorkshire when Yorkshire lost sponsors. That's the only time that we saw the ECB turn up. And then they sit in a select committee and they hammer Yorkshire, possibly, and fair play to Julian Knight, because he was not playing. He'd done his homework, and they said one thing. Well, Yorkshire wanted to do their own report. Roger Hutton had sat there an hour previous saying he'd asked for ECB help. One of them, now whether it's Roger Hutton or whether it's Tom Harrison, one of them lied to Parliament. Good luck with that. I don't know who it was who did, but the ECB were only ever interested as soon as it became a PR disaster. They could have intervened at any point. Now,
we've said a lot on this podcast, Jim, that we decided there were three reasons why people get upset about racism in cricket, in authority. It's either going to embarrass them, it's going to cost them money, or they can make some political gain by stamping their feet and getting upset about it. And that's all come through over the last couple of weeks, isn't it? You know, people don't start to do stuff or issue statements or take any action unless it's either going to embarrass them or cost them cash.
Yes. And when it comes to my feelings regards the ECB, that is absolutely how I feel. I have very little faith or confidence. They don't exist for the good of the game. They exist to make themselves money. I appreciate that's also the world that we live in. We've discussed our society, and I get that. But what they did in that DCMS is they just tried to pinpoint everything onto Yorkshire. Now, I know Roger Hutton came across as a bit of a wet blanket, and I get that. But Roger Hutton had already resigned. He didn't have to be there. Mark Arthur didn't turn up, he's resigned. Roger Hutton went, and I don't actually disbelieve a lot of what Roger Hutton said, because what did he have to gain from lying? He's going to walk out of Parliament, get back on his train, and just go home, and he'll never have to worry about Yorkshire Cricket Club ever again. There was no reason for him to say anything that wasn't the truth. Now,
don't you think, though, Jim, in terms of Yorkshire, they deserve to be singled out? We're going to see cases probably all over the country. Yorkshire deserve to be singled out, because if a club, we've seen Essex do it more than once in recent times. As soon as an issue's put in front of them, they basically say, right, this is out of order, we've got zero tolerance, we're going to look into this and we're going to do it now. Whereas Yorkshire didn't do that with Azeem. They didn't actually take his initial complaints seriously at all until until George Dobell wrote about it. So Yorkshire, I think, deserve to get a little bit more of a kicking than any of the other counties, because they could have actually avoided all this. Because if they'd actually taken notes on Azeem and investigated it properly and taken appropriate action, we'd never have been sat here talking about it.
They could have dealt with this at any point over the last 16 months. They completely and utterly failed to do so. But that's the arrogance of the old boys network who runs Yorkshire. And I'll use Chris's term, the old boys club. They all sit there and they just think that they're better than everybody, and they know what's best. I mean, I followed the stories. You did I remember when you did your podcast. I remember when you did an interview with Tahar from Wisdom, and then George Dobell picked up on it. And I followed it. and I followed it, and there's always been something. Yorkshire has got to have something here. There's got to be a tangible reason why they're not releasing this report. There's got to be something. And then all of a sudden, they actually had nothing. All they had was their bullish arrogance that it was going to go away. And it never went away, and that's why we're here. And I don't disagree with sanctioning. I do have tickets for the test match next year, and it'll be quite inconvenient from a selfish point of view. But I do agree that Yorkshire needs sanctioning. But I do also feel a little bit that the ECB in the DCMS, the ECB didn't care for 15 and a half months. They weren't bothered. They weren't interested. But when they went to the DCMS and they were just like, oh, well, it was Yorkshire this, it was Yorkshire this, Yorkshire this, Yorkshire that, Yorkshire. And even Julian Knight was just like, well, no, you're the custodian of the game. What did you actually do here?
I think... sorry, James.
You carry on, Chris.
Well, I think part of your initial question before to Jim was about what can or will the ECB do, and part of me says I'm not sure because I think they will be incredibly reluctant to set stronger precedent because for the sake of devil's advocate, what happens if Lancashire, Trent Bridge, Surrey, what happens if something similar comes out there and all of a sudden they've got no venues for test grounds, right? They could have a huge problem. They could have a huge problem. And I also think that the fact that they have obviously come out of having not supported Yorkshire through this process means it's very hard for them to take the high moral ground in terms of issuing a too strong a punishment.
I got the impression, Chris, that the ECB had almost purposely stepped back, waiting for Yorkshire to make a mess of it so they could ride in to sort it all out. But it's not quite played out like that, has it?
No, well, Jim used two phrases which did make me laugh. I mean, first of all, like lying to Parliament, good luck with that. Well, we do have quite a lot of that going on at the moment. And the second one, to use the words ECB and PR disaster and it not be about the ECB, was slightly ironic as well at the moment, because they're coming on the back of that. I mean, it was one of those punishments that sounded draconian. We've suspended you from all major games during the 5-month period where there are none scheduled, right? And unless you've actually shown significant steps, which we haven't defined, in correcting this issue that we've been in denial existed. I'm not quite sure how you take that forward, really.
They've also suspended Gary Balance from England selection when they haven't picked him for however 4 years is it anyway. Yeah.
I suspect Jim and I aren't going to get selected either.
I don't know, Chris. I don't know. I think you're in the frame. If there's a couple of injuries in the Ashes, they might call upon you. Let's round this off a little bit because I mean one of the things I want to get across in this from my point of view is I think obviously there's this smear campaign a little bit against Azeem at the moment. He's not an angel, as Jim says. He's never actually tried to paint himself as being an angel either. That's important to note. He's never actually said, I am the bastion of everything that's virtuous in the world. And I think, whatever comes out in the future about Azeem, but he could be the worst person in the world. He's still got to have the right procedures to deal with racism allegations. You've still got to deal with racism properly. And it's quite clear that from what the club has done, they haven't dealt with it properly. There's 36 people knocking on the door at the moment with their own versions of that. And I think there's more to come too. So the club's got a lot of work to do there and it needs to be better in that regard. And in that regard, let's round off with the EGM then. You're pushing for one in the new year. You're pushing for one to basically make the club actually listen to the members. How do members that are watching this who haven't actually seen your thing to sign, how do they get involved with that?
There's an email address. It's disgruntledmembers@outlook.com. Drop me an email there and
disgruntled members out at outlook.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, or find Jim and I on Twitter.
Yeah.
We do have to have the member's name and their membership number. And obviously, since we set this up, the world has turned on its head. In terms of there is no denial now. It's out there. Changes are taking place. But the concept about the EGM, we've repeatedly said, is that fundamentally it's a way of making Yorkshire, and I would say to Lord Patel, this is a way of helping you, and it's a strong sign of a more collaborative approach from the bottoms up to trying to address, the issues of racism, and also just the sheer credibility of Yorkshire now. Jim says that I go to my cricket club, right? And I hate to use the word banter, but you get riffed a bit, now about it, and the 33 championships, the strong England, strong Yorkshire, strong England, it's all been undone now, and it's a shame, and it's unnecessary, and it can be corrected.
I was going to say, it can be put back together, but it needs the members to kind of come back together and to support the club through this process to a degree, doesn't it? Obviously, if things go wrong in the future, the members shouldn't be frightened to actually say what's gone wrong. But generally speaking, the members are part of that club and need to play a big part in that. Chris and Jim, I'm going to let you get on with your evenings. It's been very good to talk to you both and to see your lovely little faces on my screen in front of me. I wish you all the best and for over the next few weeks, and for a happy Christmas and for an EGM-filled New Year. And hopefully our club mends itself and goes on to bigger and better days in the future, and we can hook up at Headingley and maybe share a pint together in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, James.
I thought you might say that. I thought you might say that. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for joining me. We'll be back on the Cricket Badger podcast very, very soon with other people to be talked to. I think I've got Shield Berry coming on. He's got a new book coming out very soon indeed. And then obviously the Ashes, not too far away. We'll be talking about all of that as we go through the winter. Chris and Jim, thanks again. And I'll talk to you guys out there very soon indeed.